begin.
What's up, nation? Welcome to another edition of the Wise Take MLB First Look. We have a 15-game slate to break down today, and it is massive. 15 games is obviously big, but we have a ton of pitching. Ton of really good pitchers going today. Some better than others, some matchups better than others, but just a lot of really good pitching in general. Pretty much at every tier. That's what it kind of seems like. You have your studs up top. Kershaw seems to be the standout stud, but you're paying that premium for him at $12K. You've got Bieber a little bit cheaper against the Mets. The positive for Bieber is he'll be playing in the National League, so he'll get to pitch to a pitcher instead of a DH. Downside, of course, is the Mets have been a little bit more of a scrappy offense, don't strike out a ton. And Mets is actually not that terrible of a hitter. Some of the Mets pitchers are actually better hitters than some of the other teams. Anyway, just to kind of touch on a few things. The point is the slate is loaded. We've got options at every tier, high, medium, low. There are even some guys you can consider. I don't know if you're going to need it. We don't have cores on this slate. So it kind of really depends. I'm not really sure if we're going to need some of the cheaper options, but the top and mid tiers are definitely loaded. Even starting the cash game conversation, it's easy for me to just say Kershaw as your SP1, but again, there are really, really good options. For instance, we have Sonny Gray here at 9.7 against the Padres. Sonny Gray has been just awesome lately, coming off of a 32 burger against St. Louis. So it's just one example. You can make an argument for PINEDA against the White Sox. Last time he pitched the White Sox, he did well, and you'd be saving a lot of money, being that he's only 8,900. So there are a lot of ways to go. Being that we have so many guys in the mid tier, I still think I prefer Kershaw. Just seems like the safest. Toronto will lose a hitter. They will lose a DH, so they'll have to bat their pitcher. And Kershaw has just been pretty nasty as far as ceiling goes. Just awesome. St. Louis has been terrible offensively. Miami's been terrible offensively, but still, he did flash that upside, that ceiling that a lot of people claimed he no longer had. So I do like Kershaw. I think in cash games, he's probably someone I would try to make a priority, especially being that we don't have cores on this slate. We could probably make things work. As far as SP2s go in cash, because we have Kershaw in as the SP1, we are going to want to see how low we can go. And again, you can get pretty low. I think the guy that stands out the most is probably Aaron Sanchez. He's coming off of a really bad outing against Oakland, which he gave up 4 homers. For some reason, Oakland's kind of had his number. But you can see the previous starts, he was trending in the right direction. He was pitching really well, and he gets Detroit today. Granted, Detroit did put up some runs today, but he is backed by a really powerful offense in the Houston Astros. And I think right now he makes the most sense. He's going to provide us with enough relief. And as you can see, if you go with the Kershaw-Sanchez combo, you have 3,900 left per position. So you find yourself a couple value plays, maybe at catcher, maybe at second base, and an outfielder. I think you'll be in a pretty good situation to be able to grab at least one, if not maybe 2 studs, and find a nice balanced approach for the rest of your hitters. So that's the combination I would probably roll with in cash as of now. Of course, this is a first look. We'll have to dig in on some of this stuff tomorrow, see what these lineups look like. In tournaments, it's kind of wide open. If you didn't want to go the Sanchez route, like I said, this mid-tier is fairly loaded. You got Cole Hamels, who's been awful, but he does get the Giants, and he's going to be at home in Chicago as a potential option. Dylan Bundy's kind of curious, right? Did not do well against the Yankees. That's the Yankees. Did well against Houston, though, and Toronto. And Toronto at the time was pretty hot. And both these games were in Baltimore, which is just wild. Now he gets Kansas City, a team that, not very good when you look at their lineup. He's kind of interesting at 7.4. He does have a lot of strikeout upside, but of course he's got the blow-up potential. And yeah, just kind of scrolling through Keuchel. One thing about Keuchel is his home and road splits have been pretty drastic so far this year. You can see at home in the same innings, just about the same. He's got one more inning pitched at home, 33.1 innings pitched at home, 32.1 on the road. He's averaging 20.5 DraftKings points at home and only 7.4 on the road. So I do think there's a pretty drastic difference. Look at the strikeouts alone. He's got 7 more strikeouts at home. And again, he's got one more full inning, but he's actually had more road starts yet he has more innings at home, which means he's lasting longer. He's given up 23 earned runs on the road, only 9 earned runs at home. And again, he's pitched more innings, one more inning at home this year. The hits are doubled, 44 on the road, 22 at home. The home runs, 9 on the road, only 2 at home. So he's clearly been much better at home. And if you look at his game logs, you can see at home against the Mets, really good game. On the road against Miami, he got blown up. Home against Cincinnati wasn't a phenomenal outing. Cincinnati can be pretty tough on lefties, but he still had a decent outing at 14. On the road against Washington, only a 5. At home against Kansas City, went for 30. On the road in Milwaukee, only went for 10. San Diego was the one road start he did well in, but that is San Diego. And you can see he even saw Miami, and when he saw them at home, he did just fine, put up 20. So all of his bad starts, like really bad starts, were on the road. So I do think that he's definitely viable today. I'm not a big Keuchel guy. I like guys that like naturally have more strikeout upside in them. But I'm totally fine picking on Miami. We saw they struck out a ton against Clayton Kershaw. I'm not comparing Keuchel to Kershaw, but if you look at those home and road splits, it's tempting. Keuchel's very, very tempting. And like, if you wanted to load up on bats, you have the potential of going Sanchez, Keuchel. You might not have the ceiling if you don't take a guy like Kershaw, one of those other SP1s, but you will have flexibility in your lineup. And if you think you can make it up by getting the stack right or just loading up on the right bats, it might be worth doing something like that. The other approach is some of these other stud pitchers just aren't in great matchups, like ARENADO. You can make the same argument about like Bieber we just talked about briefly. So looking into those guys could be fairly important, and because they have so much upside and they're gonna be solo owned, I just don't see people going to Bieber at 11.6 when you got Kershaw at 12K. I just don't see it. So again, pitching is very deep, and again, Sonny Gray I use as an example, and like where does he even fit into this at 9.7? So again, there's a lot of different ways to go, a lot of different things to consider. Even going down to like the cheap seats area. St. Louis almost no hit Milwaukee today as a team. Milwaukee looked like they were starting to heat up, and then they just kind of got shut down. Again, these guys are here if you want to take the chance. Eliza Hernandez, who pitched really well against Atlanta the other day. But I don't think we're going to need these guys because, again, you can just go with an Aaron Sanchez type, play him with, Keuchel, even a Sonny Gray if you want to save some money, or PINEDA, one of these options, and you can probably get pretty much with the, if you work in a value play or two, a punt or two, you'll be able to probably get whatever stack you want. So that does make the most sense. On the contrary, when we talk about bats, if you look at some of the, because pitching is so deep, the bats are going to be typically a little bit more concentrated. This is a 15-game slate, so I don't think we're going to have that problem. But one game in particular stands out. Very curious to see how chalky it'll be. But the Colorado-Arizona game probably stands out the most. I think Alex Young sucks. And I'm not just saying that because he burned me on a day where I had a pretty good squad going. I genuinely think he's not any good. He hasn't given up a ton of home runs. It's just more of an earn run thing. So that kind of, feeds you into the question. But looking at both of these pitchers, Kyle Freeland, who did pitch, looked like he was going to pitch okay against the D-backs and Coors, and then finally just kind of fell apart. This time he's got a better road matchup, but I just think Arizona is very good against lefties. So Arizona does stand out to me quite a bit against Freeland. I think that Colorado, I don't like playing them on the road, but I do think Alex Young sucks. So Colorado kind of stands out to me as well against Alex Young. And then the next offense that kind of pops out is Chris Archer on the hill, who's been decent lately, but still the Nationals are just red hot right now. Very, very tough to not want a national stack every day right now. They're just doing crazy things. We've seen them get hot like this in years past, different seasons, and this year we kind of all waited for this to happen. It never happened, but it seems to be happening right now. So I do think the Nationals kind of stand out, and they were really low owned today, despite the fact that they broke the slate 2 days in a row. So that's kind of interesting. Shout out to Patio Joe and Paulie D. They were both pretty high in the Nationals today, or last night, whatever you want to call it. But they certainly stand out to me. I think, what was it? There's another offense. I think the Twins are interesting. I think Reynaldo López has been a lot better this year, and I'm not like a huge believer in him, but I do think that he's got potential. But the Twins are just a tough matchup for him. We'll want to see if Kepler's in the lineup, but this can be a pretty good spot for Minnesota, who completely disappointed me today in multiple facets, but could be an interesting spot for them. So as you can see, it's like the pitching was more fun to talk about. It was more direct and where to go. But there's a lot of spots to go with hitting. I didn't even mention Houston, who's got one of the highest run totals on the slate. They get Turnbull, who I actually think is a decent pitcher, but the terrible bullpen behind them. The issue, of course, with Houston is going to be their pricing. Let's take a look and see if DraftKings bothered to lower any of their prices. The pricing yesterday was wacky. They've been lowered a little bit. You can see that some of these guys are at least under 5K. They're still very expensive, but they've been lowered a little bit, making it a little easier to reach those dudes. But Houston definitely highly in play. And then, of course, the last game I'll talk about, I'm not going to talk about every game, but the last game I'll talk about is going to be Arlington, a situation we want to look into. Heaney is very home run prone. I think he's good. I think Heaney's got a lot of strikeout upside, but he is very home run prone. He did go 90 pitches in this game against the White Sox. Gave up 3 earned, gave up 2 homers, but he had 6 Ks and went 7 innings, so it kind of balanced out. The Rangers all season have been striking out a ton against lefties. We want to see what lineup comes out, though, because lately they haven't struck out as much against lefties. And you factor in this is Arlington, and Heaney's always been a homer-prone pitcher, even against the White Sox. That's where he got burnt, was by the home runs. So that's a very boom or bust option. I think Heaney, if he's going to get 90 pitches or more, does have a ton of upside against the Rangers. I also think he's got a lot of blow potential. And we got Joe Palumbo on the other side for the Rangers. I don't think Palumbo is very good. He doesn't miss many bats. The Angels were pretty damn cold up until last night's slate when they did do well, and where they do well in Arlington. Anytime you get the Angels in like a massive park boost situation like that, it's hard not to be interested no matter how cold or whatever they are. So I would be interested in going back to the Angels, especially considering how bad the Texas Ranger bullpen is. So, it's a 15-game slate. We always recommend to people on 15-game slates to try and play in smaller fields. If you're doing MME, if you're an MME player, you're doing 150 teams a night or more, then you can cover what you got to cover. I typically like to have a core regardless of what type of play I do, whether it's MME or 3 teams, whatever the case may be. I like to have some type of core, because if I am right about the core, I want it to take me to the top. I don't want to just min cash. I want to go to the top. So if I can get 3 teams to get to the top, I'm more likely to have one of them that wins, rather than if I have 150 teams of randoms and I get one right. What are the chances that one out of the 150 you built and the multiple thousands of people you're playing against, that one is going to be it's more or less like the lottery at that point. So again, taking stance is important. I think you do want to take some stance, but at the same time, I think that the best way to kind of combat, if you're not doing MME, the best way to kind of combat these massive slates is to play in smaller fields. Please play against less people. Find contests that are a little bit smaller in size, because you know that they're not going to cover everything. And the other thing is, don't overthink things on these massive slates. Like yesterday, Paulie was getting on me, and he was absolutely right. Like I played a lot of the chalk, and I shouldn't have. McKay was like 50% owned. Even if he did well, it just made more sense to fade him and hope he didn't do well. And I think the donkey winning team had like a 5-man Nationals, which was the Nationals have been hot, and then a 3-man leverage stack with Seattle, and that was just kind of the nuts. So on this kind of slate, I'm not so worried about chalk because there's so many options. I'm really not worried about chalk. I'm going to play the guys that I think are in the best spot, whether it's pitching, stacks, whatever, and not worry about the field and kind of let the field kind of make those mistakes. You know what I'm saying? So that would be my tidbit of advice. Before I do the top 3s, if you're interested in more fire DFS content, come visit us at wisetake.com. We are a DFS community and a DFS premium content provider. You can get a day pass, $2.50 all it costs to try us for a day. Again, this show is a first look, and I'm kind of going over my initial thoughts with you guys, but there's a lot we have to look into. What lineups come out. We got to look into a lot of these stats, recent trends, how guys have been doing lately, and really, really dig in deep. Is what we do at the Wise Take Nation. So come check us out if you're interested. $2.50 all it costs. Try us out for a day. You'll get access to all the actual MLB content. Only thing you don't get is a Slack chat. Slack chat is for monthly memberships or higher. I do recommend, if you get the day pass and you like what you see, I do recommend you get a monthly membership or higher. You'll save some money that way, and also you'll get access to the Slack, which I think is pretty crucial. Talking to some of our members who've been with us for a long time can be very beneficial. So, you can kind of learn things from these people, share some ideas, bounce thoughts off them. Our analysts are in there at times. Our members are always willing to talk to Slate with anybody, and, pretty welcoming. Just don't be a dick, obviously. But, come check us out, ystate.com. All right, so on this first look, I think Kershaw's number 1. I'm going to go with Keuchel number 2 and just ride those home and road splits. This is a very generic top 3. I could have gotten creative, but I'm not going to. And then Sanchez, I will go with as my 3rd. So that's Kershaw, Keuchel, Sanchez. As far as the bats go, I'm going to go with the Arizona Diamondbacks, number 1. We will go with, let's think about this first. There's a lot. Do we go back to the Nationals? Can they do it again? Can they do it again? As a Met fan, it kills me. But I think for now, we will. Because they've just been red hot. Probably too late to be hopping on the train. We'll see. I'll dig in tomorrow and see if I find something better. But for now, I will rock with it. And then I'm gonna go with the Angels. So Arizona, Washington, and Los Angeles. Angels of Anaheim as the top 3 stacks. As far as home runs go, I'm gonna go with Nolan Arenado, who seems to be heating up a little bit. A lot of it, I guess. Granted, this 2 home run game was in Coors, but before that even, it was all that Coors. But he's starting to finally get it together, having a down year. But I'm gonna go Nolan Arenado, number 1 against the lefty, who I don't think is very good. Number 2, we are going to go with number 2, Soto. Now that's one national I can play every single day. This guy is so good. Juan Soto, number 2. And number 3, who do we take with number 3? We're going to go to Arizona, and we're going with Ketel Marte. So these are 3 studs. They could be tough to play together, but maybe not, because, again, there is a lot of ways to go at pitcher. There's a lot of the mid-tier, some cheap guys. So, and I'm sure there'll be some value as far as the bats go. So, yeah, Arenado, Soto, Marte. That's the Dong Watch today. Again, guys, if you're watching YouTube, please click that thumbs up, that like button, and make sure you subscribe to the channel. Hit the notifications bell. Don't forget to check out our Wise Take Nation podcast, which is a little more general. We talk about a variety of topics. Most recently, this week's episode, we did talk about bachelor parties, strippers, strip clubs, all that good stuff, in addition to some NFL and even some NBA. It's a long show. We put out some clips, but go check it out if you have some time. It's also available on iTunes and Podbean if you just want to listen to it. Maybe you have a long ride coming up. It's pretty entertaining, I'd say. You never know what you're going to come across on those, but this past week's show was pretty wild, so I do recommend you go ahead and check that out. But either way, hit the notifications bell on the channel so that you're notified whenever we put any content out. Most of the time it's DFS stuff, but we try to have some fun here and mix it up. So appreciate you guys watching and supporting, as always. And for myself, the entire Wise Take Nation, as always, good luck.
Yes.